Barry Ferguson is doing as good a job as a coat stand would be at the side of the touchline, right? The only thing that lets that argument down is the fact he beat us.
I'm not getting any interest in this dead rubber pattern. It doesn't matter, etc. It matters hugely to me.
Somebody over there in the same a stand across from me, it's £10, but I'm paying 42.
I think Scottish football needs to get a grip of itself a bit here.
Whatever you charge us, we're going to charge your fans. But we don't need you in our ground. You need us. Welcome to the podcast of the champions. Celtic do it again, winning the title at Tannadice in style. I'm your host Jamie, joined by Melly.
Yes.
Stephen.
Hello.
Got it this time.
Take two on hello. That is extraordinary stuff, isn't it?
Acknowledging your own name. You're just so excited about this whole thing. There's still a couple of jobs left for the season, Melly. We still have to beat Rangers, which we'll be talking about towards the end of the podcast. There's the Scottish Cup. That's coming, but these things are merely baubles, merely bonuses on the task at hand, the hard graft, and that's winning the title. This is how you decide who the best is. It's over the course of a season. It doesn't matter what happens here, there, or on a good afternoon or a bad afternoon. Who are the ones at the end of the season that have got their hands on the trophy, and that's going to be Glasgow Celtic yet again.
Sure, about 4 in a row, and just before we were talking there, I cast my mind back to the time when 55 killdews in it, it's all you think about, and now we're on 55 and we don't really care about it. We just count it as another title towards the next one. Lovely to seal it at Tannadice in style as well. There's been a lot of chat of tedious and boring, and Celtic seal the league by going out and winning 5-0 and are on course to score the most goals ever in a season.
A legitimate 55 as well.
That last one didn't count. It's nice to see your team win things in the stadium.
Boring, isn't it? Staying in, watching Celtic win title after title with your life. Not for me, I like it.
I saw a Spurs fan on Twitter quote go, "Do they ever get bored?" And I thought, you're a Spurs fan? Try it.
The only way you get to see a title winning party is by being pumped off Liverpool.
Yeah, I've been the other team.
In fairness, if there's one thing Spurs are not, it's boring.
Yes,
certainly
that's
not
true.
this season, certainly not predictable. But yeah, brilliant. It's, again, all the talk just goes out the window when you actually seal it, and when Celtic are able to, in the words of Callum McGregor, sprint over the line in style like that. It just kind of, you're allowed to talk about it along the way, the coming and goings, the to's and fro's of a normal season. Sometimes there are ups and downs along the way, and you talk about them at the time. But as you say, when all's said and done, Celtic are champions again, and absolutely...
To's and fro's, ups and downs, said and done. Wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another one. Ebbs and flows, there's another one. But look, at the end of the day... It's a season of two halves, and it's about the next one. But look, Celtic are, by a long, long way, deserved champions this season once again, and they've done it in style, putting to bed all that stuff about how it's tedious and all that. Look, we spoke about that.
17 points.
Yeah, 17 points and potentially growing. That article that we spoke about last week, that incendiary article that was rolled in there to try and kind of poo-poo Celtic's achievements once again. The Scottish media are really good at that.
Yeah,
never really want a genuine, open conversation about how do we fix this, how do we progress, how do we make Scottish football better. They just wait till Celtic are climbing ahead and they just pull back down. The crabs in the bucket analogy once again. As Celtic start escaping that bucket, they're just pulling them straight back down. So brilliant stuff. A thoroughly enjoyable game as well, and to do it in style like that for, let's face it, not the first time. There are a number of times that Celtic have clinched a title by 5 goals on the clinching day. So yeah, a thoroughly enjoyable afternoon.
It's always, I always find it's either that sort of last time at Tannadice 1-1, that tight game, or Celtic go out and destroy them, same as Kilmarnock last season. I did have a wee sort of envious eye at the Liverpool game, the said game against Tottenham yesterday, and the scenes before that they were welcoming their team to Anfield. But it doesn't matter, does it, really? No. But it would have been nice to do it at Celtic Park. But just seeing, like, going away to Tannadice, where Celtic have already drawn this season, it could have been a tough game, and to just go out and blow them away. And some of the play from Celtic you've seen reminds you why they are champions, because they're the best team in the league, and when Celtic are on form, nobody can live with them. And like, Celtic goalkeeper had the ball at one point, and about 10 to 15 seconds later the ball was in the back of the net up the pitch, so Celtic can move it quickly and get up the pitch and just look like a Brendan team again.
But I think that's important to recognise, because it is the league we're talking about, and there's other teams who have had moments throughout this season, and those moments are usually because Celtic switched off or didn't show up. And we discussed that a couple of weeks ago. Brendan acknowledged it, the team acknowledged it, but even that little period of maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago where things slowed down. That seems to have been completely gone now. And other teams have had their moments throughout the season, but it is an enormous achievement to finish the way that Celtic have finished, as strong as we've finished, for the 4th season in a row. And you mentioned that the Rangers won their 55th trophy a couple of years ago, but the perception for them was...
A couple insinuates maybe 2,
yeah.
4.
Well, obviously
5.
it was 4 years ago, whatever it was, but there was a perception that that's them back. But the difficult thing is, right, go do it again.
Yep.
And that's where the challenge comes from. Go do it again. Every day, Leicester won the title once.
Yeah.
Go do it again. Can he do it? And that's where I see the difference.
Comparing Rangers to Leicester, I love it.
Well, that's basically
a 5,000 to 1 shot.
I know.
And
Well,
they deserve to be.
well, that's it. But it's the point I'm making is you can sit and you can sing and dance, and they're still banging on about a title, and they've numbered at 55 for their own reasons. They're still banging on about a title they won all those years ago. But Celtic have picked themselves up, won again, won another one. And it was something that Callum McGregor was talking about after the game. It's keeping that standard high. And in many ways, this 4th title is almost as difficult as winning the first one and getting yourself back on the horse, because it, as I was saying with plenty of other teams, that sustained excellence is really, really hard to replicate year on year on year. And people can listen to this, and I'm sure they will in the comments, and they'll say, but Rangers fell off, and there was no sustained challenge from Hearts, and Aberdeen had a great start, and they felt, that can happen to Celtic too. Brendan Rodgers could have had a great start to the season and fell off. We didn't. Our manager could have been absolutely crap and we replaced him with a caretaker manager. We didn't. Our manager could have had a hot 6 months, thought he was hot shit, then decided that his team weren't going to win any more games for with Aberdeen what felt like 8 months. But that didn't. All of the things that happened to these other clubs, the only reason Celtic are immune from that is by how hard they work, how they do the hard yards, how they do the difficult stuff, and how they turn up week in, week out for every training session. So there's a perception sometimes that, Celtic strolled to this title, surprise, surprise. Look at all the money they spent, surprise, surprise, all these things. All the things that befell these other teams, particularly Rangers, could have happened to Celtic, and they just didn't, because we worked harder than everybody else.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Brendan Rodgers and Callum McGregor were quite eager to tell us after the game, look, this looks easy. Yes, we're whatever it was before the game, was it 15 points ahead or whatever, but it's the hard work that goes on behind the scenes that gets you. You said Celtic strolled the league. Yes, they did, because they were consistently better than everybody else and they worked harder than everybody else. It's easy saying that it's 4 in a row. It's not as if it's the same players coming in every year. There's new players coming in. We've seen it recently. Brendan Rodgers spoke about it again last week, how some guys have come in, and it does take an adjustment period to come into this club and realise, look, you do need to win every week. And I know you can't win every week, but there is an expectation that you come in and you win. That's not easy for a lot of players to come in, and Celtic have to drive this standard that when you come in here, this is the expectation and you have to live up to it. If you don't, you won't play, as we're seeing with guys like Trusty coming out the team. Brendan Rodgers spoke about Engels maybe not getting at the start. These guys come in and out, but at the end of the day, it's the same team picking up the trophy. It's not a fluke. It's never going to be a fluke. The best team over the course of the season wins it, and the best team almost all of the time is the hardest working team.
There's something, Stephen, there's something worth noting though, that okay, we had the hard games, the Champions League, the glamour moments, and then it sort of dipped a wee bit. But Brendan managed to arrest that, and he managed to turn that around, because that and I think that's quite important, because very rarely do you see a team who have already they've more or less won the league, and they went, okay, well look, that's fine, there's very little to play for anymore. But Brendan seemed to quickly get a hold of that and say, nah, that's not what we do here. And you did, as Melly said, you saw players come out of the team. You saw like Scales getting reintroduced to the team. Greg Taylor came back in the team. Brendan spotted that and thought, nah, look, this is not the way we do things here. And that was an insight. That turnaround and the change in personnel as well has been an insight into how Brendan Rodgers wants to manage this team.
Yeah, and therein lies the not the sole reason that Celtic are successful, but it points to the work that goes into Celtic maintaining the success that they enjoy. It's problem solving along the way. It's not just, right, who's spent the most money at the start of the season, right, give them the title because it's pointless playing it out. It's about problem solving along the way. And that Borussia Dortmund game could easily have completely derailed. Not to the point where we won nothing, we finished in the bottom six or anything like that. You have to be realistic, but it could have been a huge knock to the confidence. And not only did Celtic bounce back from that, they actually performed really well in the Champions League, as we've discussed many times. And
pre and post Champions League games, those games can be difficult.
Definitely, and it's the biggest cliche going. I know we like to make fun of like sporting cliches on there, but sometimes
and you've had a few yourself.
Of course, yeah. Even when I'm the butt of the joke, we like to make fun of sporting cliches, but sometimes they become cliches for a reason. It's because they're logical and they're actually reason behind it. And you follow any sport, and what they'll tell you is that it's really hard to get to the top, but it's even harder to stay there. And Celtic face those challenges basically every single year. Yes, they might fall off once in 14 years or something now. So yeah, that might happen on occasion, but the maintenance of this success at Celtic has been incredible, and really a massive achievement. And again, you can talk about money, etc. Right, but Celtic didn't strike oil. They weren't walking down the street and trip over a briefcase that had £25 million in it for this season and spent it on players.
Be a big briefcase.
Yeah, it would be a big briefcase. A briefcase full of Bitcoin, if you can picture that. But it's that the money that Celtic have got that they can reinvest into players is built on this success. It comes. It's a cycle. It's not just a fluke. They didn't win the lottery to get here. So the current success that Celtic are having, yet again culminating in another league title win, is as a result of all the previous successes. It hasn't just happened out of thin air. No,
and it's about maintaining those successes. I don't want to hammer the point home too much, but every time Celtic win a title, I'm reminded that we're not the same as Rangers. Like they, as you say, they win 1 in 14 years and they're still dining off it. I doubt very much like that part of that 55 killjoys. I doubt we're going to hear that an awful lot because we've just got 55 now, and then you would expect us. We're going to go into next season as favourites again.
No, I don't know. We've got a takeover.
We'll get a takeover.
This is the last one for a while, Timmy.
Red Bull and all that. Okay, all right, okay. We'll see. I'm not saying it was not going to happen. Obviously, the takeover and all that, but I don't feel that. I don't feel that from Rangers. I really want.
Speaking of looking into money.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, exactly. I just dare say I just want that to go quite well, so the elimination of excuses can go through. Melly, but let's turn our attention back onto Celtic. On the day, I thought we were really, really strong. I thought there was good performances. It was good to see Nicholas KUHN back on the score sheets. Gave a bit of this.
For you.
I thought that was directed at me. I thought he was going to do this and then do a little mouse ears. I thought
answers his critic. Single critic.
Do you think he made me look a right mug? Do you think he shut me up?
He played well. He was on the score sheet. It was quite looking for him to get a hat-trick, but it didn't quite fall for him. He was really like sort of vicious in his play at the start of the game. It looked like Celtic just wanted this done. It was a sort of difficult start to the game. Dundee United looked like they were coming out, and then once Celtic got into that flow and got the breakthrough, it just looked like after that we seen it in the St Johnstone game last week. That flurry of goals as soon as we opened the floodgates. There you go, Stephen.
Yep.
And the goals
Can
just...
we have a counter down here?
We ding. The goals just started to flow for Celtic, and when we're in the full flow at that way, it's really hard to live with. And Nicholas KUHN sort of rolling back the months. Yes, he can do the yada yada. Everybody's chatting away. Like, okay, Nicholas, when was your last goal? Oh, the game against Bayern Munich, when we accused you of maybe laying off a bit after that. But fair play to the guy. He's got the goals again. I would maybe temper that, but he was back to his best again. But we need to see this roll in, because simple, giving it that. If you go to IBROX and have a howl and get hooked again, then
well, that's exactly what I was going to come on to. I mean, Nicholas KUHN needs to be very careful, because look, I'm not against that. In fact, I actually want to see more shithousery in football. I really want to see a bit more of that. So if you're getting a bit of stick from the fans, or you feel like you're getting a bit of stick from the fans, and it's fair enough to give it back, but you are a player who has been hooked several times at half time recently. So if you're saying to us and your critics, shut up, I've still got it in the locker, let's see it next week. Ibrox, as Melly says, don't just do it once and then put the boots away again for 6 weeks. We want to keep seeing this from Nicholas.
Yeah, and I've got nothing against any of that, even if it was directed at the Celtic fans or critics or whatever. Not like the whole support.
What if it was directed at me? Would you stand up for me?
Yeah, that's shady, innit? I got you back.
Against Nicholas, I don't think I'd need them.
But I've not got any issue with it. I didn't have any issue when David Turnbull did the fingers in the ears thing after he scored a belter at Celtic Park, because people were on his case that day, and then he spanked one in and then stuck the fingers in the ears.
That was him telling the fans to shut up. He just didn't know the difference between that.
But there could be any number of reasons he did that, because it was close to Dundee United fans. It could be anything on the pitch, or it could be one of the opposition players. It could be, I don't know, it could be any number of reasons.
Media,
there could be any number of reasons he did that thing. It could be any number of reasons he did that thing. So, I've no issue with it at all. Even if it was a cheeky little dig at, use question me, I've no issue with it whatsoever. It's all panto at the end of the day. So, no, I've no problem with it.
Is the issue not, yes, we maybe question you, but that's because we know what you're capable of, because you show us.
It's a compliment, if anything, is that what you're saying?
You semi-regularly, you show us what you can do, but then more regularly, you're getting hooked at half-time in games where you build up to this sort of crescendo and then it just collapses away. These are the games that we expect you to deliver in, and you don't do it, and then you're having to get hooked at half-time. And to be hooked at half-time's poor, but this is what we need to see. Right, Dundee United, brilliant. IBROX next week, let's see you go and do it again, because the problem... That's not the problem. The thing with Nicholas Kuhn is he's more than capable of doing it. He's more than capable of putting up the numbers that Dyson Maeda has. He had a better start to the season than Dyson Maeda. He's just not maintained it.
I think if there's questions over Kuhn, the question isn't, hey, Kuhn, why are you rubbish? The question is, hey, Kuhn, why are you brilliant and rubbish? That's where the questions come from over the guy. But you can live with questions over your footballing career, because there are highs and lows over throughout the season. And then the guy that took his place, James Forrest, he's a guy that's had loads of questions over him the whole time he's been at Celtic. He managed to complete the Celtic's most decorated player. Everybody was I'm just choking for him to score. I think Brendan said after the game, we're all waiting for him to get on this score sheet, but I think it would be remiss of us not to talk about James Forrest. It's unbelievable that we're getting to witness that Celtic's most decorated player. We're getting to watch that unfold, and we're getting to see that in our lifetime. That's something that's going to obviously live quite long in the memory. Or, in fairness, he'll probably get overtaken by Callum McGregor just based on age and all that sort of stuff. But it's still a remarkable achievement for James Forrest. He's been around an awful long time, Melly.
Long time, baby. Yep. We'll be going on 14 years. Seasons he's scored in consecutively. It might be longer, but it's strange because everybody's delighted for him, myself as well, but I never thought I would be. I thought his career would just sort of fade away and he'd just leave Celtic, and I genuinely don't know where he would have went after Celtic, but over the past couple of seasons he's managed to turn it around, and now I enjoy watching him play. And a lot of the time I never enjoyed watching him play football, because again with him there was so much in there but we didn't see it enough. But his intelligence now, and he's able to affect games so much better because of that. But delighted to see him become the most decorated player, because that's an incredible achievement. And now that we've seen over the past couple of seasons, he's not just getting it as a token gesture. He deserves it, because last season he came in and him and Adam Ida really spurred Celtic on towards the end of the season. Two guys that came in. James Forrest came in out of nowhere. Yeah. Brendan Rodgers said best winger at the club. We were like, well, is that true, Brendan? And it is true. It's very true. So he's came on and done that, and he's a guy that's, as he's getting older, I thought his career would really tank and decline. Been the complete opposite, and I'm glad to see he's shoved it right down my throat.
It could have been very different, because I think he acknowledged that after the game in his wee press bit. He spoke about he was asked about how he could have left the club in 2016, and that, of course, that's when Brendan Rodgers came in. I think that's very much the turning point for his career.
Because he might have 6 months left in his contract. It was going out in December or something weird.
So he said that he started talking in his wee kind of post-match interview. It's on the pitch, so it's not really a proper interview or anything like that. It's just a few sound bites, and kind of asked how it felt to be, the most decorated player. But he started to talk about how that was the turning point for him in 2016. Brendan Rodgers, the turning point for a lot of players' careers, not just James Forrest, but he's probably one of the very few who are still here at this point. So he spoke about how he could have gone at that point, he could have left. And I think he stopped himself short there, because he realised that right after a game like that is not the time to be talking about how I almost left the club years ago. But he did say, it did feel like it was maybe going to be time to move on. But I think that was as a result of not him wanting to go, but feeling like he was never really going to kick on at that point. He'd been very up and down, very inconsistent. And under Dial, I think there was a the season before that he scored 2 goals or something like that, which is was better than this season. Right
You can read all about it, right? Read all about it right beside you.
Yeah,
Stephen.
it's homegrown hero just right in shot here. So for him to gone from 2016, where it felt like his Celtic career was going to basically fizzle out to nothing, be one of these quite inconsistent players, and how many players have we seen look really brilliant in their early days as a Celtic youth product and then sort of vanish?
Mikey Johnston, he could have been Mikey Johnston.
Or they end up playing for like St Mirren or Motherwell. The league is littered with guys like that who were very, very good at one point but didn't really kick on. James Forrest was never probably going to be that, but it could have been very, very different from him. So to have gone from 1 foot out the door in 2016, contract running out, poor form, to then fast forward and he's the most decorated player in the club's history is extraordinary.
I don't want to sound patronising or disrespectful when I have this conversation, but I think it's a conversation that a lot of Celtic fans will be having. Me, and I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, how did it happen for James Forrest? Because he's never been, not for a long time, or even arguably never, was he ever a first choice winger. He's been a squad player for his entire Celtic career, right? However, at any time, any manager could have got rid of him if they didn't want him.
Yeah, well, that's...
So I'm not saying that to be like, oh, he's fluked it, he's lucked out, because if you think Celtic just keep these guys about, Mikey Johnston's a great example.
Yeah,
he just at any point, any manager could have got rid of Brendan Rodgers. Any manager, could have got rid of James Forrest. The way that plenty of managers have got rid of the likes of Mikey Johnson, Aidan McGeady was sold. Loads of wingers. Even in that position, loads of wingers have came through. But James Forrest obviously has something. It's obviously his professionalism, his dedication, his work rate. So many managers have kept him. He's signed so many contracts. He's not fluked into this position. He's not just been one of the in with the bricks, will keep him about. There's something there, isn't there, that's made him achieve this. Even when you look back, and I'll go back in a second, because the lineup that James Forrest made his debut in, he's been through some really crap times at Celtic. This whole time hasn't been where, if Celtic are always winning, I suppose you could view a James Forrest like as a luxury player. You just keep him around, play him 5, 6, 7 games a season. If and when you need him, he's your third choice winger. There's been times when Celtic have not had that luxury. There's times when you've really needed people to be around. James Forrest has been kept then. Even when he was that luxury third choice winger, you could put him in that bracket last season. Comes in January and he plays and he propels us really towards this title, makes a real impact on the tail end of the season. Just
talking that up there, I think I might be right when Stephen was saying about 2016. I think since then he's won 21 trophies with Celtic. It's ridiculous.
But it's not a fluke.
No,
but you're also... But, Celtic's most decorated people. I saw people like, oh, he's not a patch on Bobby Lennox. He's not a patch on this player. Well, first of all, I don't know how many people that listen to this podcast and watch this podcast saw any of Bobby Lennox in the flesh, so you have really no idea how good that guy was on the week to week. But James Forrest is obviously, he's got something. He's doing something right.
I mean, it doesn't matter that if he's not as good as Bobby Lennox or any of these guys. The fact, I mean, of course, he has won more trophies, but of course, Bobby Lennox is. If it was a points basis, if you get 1 point per league title,
Bobby incomparable.
Bobby Lennox gets 1,000,000 points for having won the European Cup, right? So on a point, kind of trophy for trophy basis, Bobby Lennox and a lot of those guys are still ahead of James Forrest, but that doesn't matter. And in the interest of balance and accuracy, I don't think he's always been a squad player for Celtic. I think in his latter career he very much has been, but I think Neil Lennon and Brendan Rodgers first time around played James Forrest pretty much all the time. But, I suppose swapping in and out with Sinclair and Patrick Roberts and all that.
That's what I mean. He was never 100%, well, maybe my memory's failing me, but he's never 100% nailed on, James Forrest must start.
Injuries in there as well.
One season under Neil Lennon where he spanked in a lot of goals. He was sort of, and then would they score a hat-trick for Scotland one game? It was like, it was in the form of his life at that point, but I get what you mean. He's never been that... He's the best player at the club, or he's the go-to guy for Celtic. He's always been on the sort of periphery.
But 100% agree. There's no way that happens by accident. You don't just get kept around by multiple managers because you're a right good boy and you're a right good Celtic lad. And all that. That's rubbish. You don't get
teammate.
If only if Gordon Strachan could have ruined them like he did.
I heard Scotland.
Oh, sorry, but you don't get contract after contract, manager after manager really rating you, and it's not as if he's just been kept around as a mascot or anything like that. It's absurd to claim that, because I'm sure a lot of that will form some of the discussion about James Forrest. He's only won these trophies because he's been around so long, but he's been around so long, helping to win all these trophies.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the argument that people were making when Andrew Robertson was always quite mediocre, quite disappointing for Scotland at times, kind of through his career, and people wanted Kieran Tierney to play ahead of him, and that argument devolved into he only plays for Liverpool, or he only looks good for Liverpool because he's got so many other players around him. And I'm like, well,
they could easily go out and replace him.
They could afford any other left back in the world, and yet they've kept Andrew Robertson for about 9 years. So it doesn't fly at all that James Forrest has just been kept around for the sake of it. They could have easily moved him on at any given point. In fact, I remember when he got his, not this contract extension, but the previous one, where I thought, this is absolutely crazy. But it turned out to be exactly the right call to make at the time. Under Ange, would that have been? I think they give him an extension. So there's no way this kind of longevity and this kind of success for an individual player happens for the sake of it. You don't win 20-odd trophies by accident at a club. No, that's a great achievement.
So if you're listening to this on Thursday, it's the 1st of May on Thursday, Stephen.
Right.
But as we record this, it's Monday, the 29th of April.
So once you start...
So it's April until it's May, is that what you're saying, on Thursday? Right,
yeah,
okay.
So if you're listening to this on Thursday, it's the 1st of April. But if you're listening to it before then, it's 1st of May, it's still April. However, the 1st of May 2010 is when James Forrest made his debut for Celtic.
Motherwell?
It was Motherwell. I've got a more difficult question than that.
Jeez,
Yeah, so 14 players took part in that game. 11 starters and 3 subs, Melly. How many do you think you can name?
5?
Stephen,
Go ahead.
top 5? Right, let's hear it, Melly. Go.
Right. Oh, for quickness as well.
Yep, a quick game is a good game. Yep.
Who've been between the sticks? Fraser Forster?
Wrong.
Oh,
right,
Boric.
It's over.
Right, it's over. So the lineup was Boric, Hinkle, Brathwaite, Josh Thompson, Darren O'Day, Scott Brown, Zheng Ji, Aidan McGeady, who made way for James Forrest, Georges Samaras, who made way for Diomansi Kamara, Marc-Antoine Fortuné, and Robbie Keane came off the bench for one Morten Rasmussen. That was the sort of era we're talking about when James Forrest made his debut. Incidentally, Robbie Keane scored his 16th goal of the season. having joined in January, coming off the bench in May. Absolutely absurd. So the point is, like, James Forrest has been through so many eras as a Celtic player, and at any point, any manager didn't fancy him, could have got rid of him. And it's his hard work and dedication and professionalism and that sort of thing, I suppose we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, that winning mentality that carries Celtic through. It's the guys that have got that. It's the guys that get that last. And the reason they last is because they get it, and because guys that get it last, we keep repeating it. It's kind of like almost a self-fulfilling prophecy,
and
isn't
it's not always
you see
obvious.
the opposite on the other side of the city.
Oh yeah, I mean, completely
keeping losers around.
Completely bereft of that. But it's not always obvious. It's not always the guys who are talkers. It's not always the guys who are loud and brash and have all the personality on the pitch. Sometimes it's just guys who exude that kind of I've been there, done that attitude behind the scenes.
There's different types of leaders, isn't
yeah,
there?
definitely. And look, people say that about Greg Taylor as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think there are similarities there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Greg Taylor is often cited as one of the big personalities in the dressing room, even if he's not necessarily the loudest player publicly or anything like that. I think James Forrest is not like that either. James Forrest is very seemingly very quiet and humble. Again, it's mentions many times in this book that he is not on social media, so you don't really hear much from James Forrest at all. He does always talking on the pitch for the most part, and he probably more than anyone is a great example of that winning mentality and the been there, done that attitude that is required at a club there.
Is this because the guys we've mentioned there, like James Forrest, Greg Taylor, Callum McGregor, and when I was at the coaching convention last year, I think it was, Brendan Rodgers named Tony Ralston about something as well. It's all about driving the standards and being here and know what it is. And are we at this sort of point where who's next for that? Because
I think that's part of the reason we're bringing a guy Tierney. I think it must be.
But even then, he's not a young guy anymore. He's sort of late 20s, isn't he? Mid to late 20s. We need to find this next crop of players or these next guys, because it's essential. Because then what happens in 4 or 5 years' time, these guys are all gone. Who's driving these standards? Because there's nobody coming through with that. And as I thought about it when I just said, look across the city, there's nobody driving the standards. There's nobody been there and done it that brings this on, that's been at Celtic, that's been there, that's bringing it through and saying, look, it's not acceptable, this sort of behaviour here, or these.
Well,
these
there's one in
standards.
the dugout. That's why he's there. He's at the dugout, but it shows you that it takes more than just speaking it. It's more than just doing. It's more than just saying the thing. It's living the life and being that person and doing the hard bit that people don't see. It's a great point you make, because it is very easy. I mean, we're treading thin ice here, maybe a wee bit slagging Barry Ferguson, but he's definitely copping it. But it is very, very easy.
Here we go again.
It is very easy to be like a Barry Ferguson and stand there and go, this is what it takes. This is not good enough. We're built on winning football games, and we should win things. And give all these words. Just say everything that sounds right. That's the easy bit. The difficult bit is carrying it through in your professional career. The difficult is actually living it. It's easy to say all these things, but Barry Ferguson has got the same opportunities as a manager that Brendan Rodgers does right now to inspire these players. He's not really doing it, but it's obviously just the words are not working. Obviously,
you don't say it to do it.
Yeah,
you do it to say it, don't you? That's what you need to do, and that's what Celtic do. They go out in the pitch and they do it, and then they can say, "This is what we expect." Whereas Barry Ferguson's going, "This is what we expect." And if somebody's come over and going, "Right, you're telling me what you expect," but if I look back over the history books over the last 10 years, that's not what happens here. Whereas at Celtic, this is what happens here. If you don't meet those standards, you're not going to play. Like, how many players have we come in and seen they've not worked out? And we go back to the tried and tested.
Even just this season. You could just look to, you could even argue that Austin Trusty is a victim of that. You know, he's not doing what the manager needs him to do, and he's kind of in and out the team, and that's different. We are going to talk about the Rangers game in the sort of second half of the podcast, but there is a bit to get through this week because we are champions. You were at Tannadice Melly. How much did you pay for your ticket?
£42.
Absolute scandal. Absolute scandal, Stephen. I think the price. I know Celtic. I previously didn't think Celtic said anything on this, but somebody alerted me on the Discord, which is on patreon.com/20minutetims. If you want to follow us for the remainder of the season, lots to talk about, especially with the Glasgow Derby coming up, the title celebrations, the Scottish Cup final, and everything else that's happening with Celtic. Patreon.com/20minutetims is where you can get extra podcasts, extra videos, extra content.
And entry to the Discord.
And entry to the Discord. We're in there talking about football, talking about Celtic and absolutely everything else. Stephen, somebody drew my attention to the fact that Celtic sort of made a complaint to the SPFL prior
ahead of time, ahead of the game, wasn't it? Yeah.
Aye.
The tickets didn't go on sale till a week ago, Monday, for a game that was on the Saturday. So on top of the £42, you had to go and pick up your ticket or pay the £9 special delivery to get it to you in time.
It's a scandal, and I think it's one of these things, usual peanut gallery online. Celtic fans complain about ticket prices, they complain about their blah, blah, blah. I'm not really interested. But what I'm interested in is you can't have a situation in the league where really clubs can just charge whatever they want to away fans. And truthfully, I want to see Celtic flex a bit of muscle here. I would have liked to have seen Celtic, I think, too far-fetched, obviously, but could Celtic have protected the fans financially in some kind of way? Could they have bought up every ticket for the full price and then resold them to Celtic fans for an agreeable price? Maybe that's something Celtic could have done. Could Celtic have put out a strongly worded statement to Dundee United going, look, we really disagree with this and we'd like you to review the ticket price? Maybe, but that didn't happen. Could Celtic have went to Dundee United, okay, we're going to pay your £42 this time, but we're not taking another ticket for this fixture next season, so can think carefully about how much you want to charge Celtic fans. I think we need to be a wee bit more strong here, because you can't just have people rip the piss out of us. And there's an assumption, weird assumption, where clubs think because you support the bigger team, you have more money to spend
I know,
supporting them. It's
nonsense.
It's absolute nonsense. There's no reason why a Celtic fan should be charged any more than an Aberdeen or a Hibs or a St Mirren fan to watch a game of football. But we see it every single time Celtic are in town.
Yeah, and imagine like just treating every Man City fan like they're a Saudi billionaire.
Like their first name is Sheikh.
Yeah, it's complete nonsense. That it's not connected to what club you support at all. This is a consumer product on sale to the public, albeit a certain part of the public, but it's absolutely not how it should work at all. It's outrageous, and I know that obviously that it sort of manifested itself in a fans protest right at the start of the game, and again a wee bit later on.
Yeah.
Now, Brendan Rodgers at the time looked a bit annoyed about it. He was shaking his head on camera. Now, I'm perfectly prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt and just sort of assume that he didn't know what it was about. Maybe just assumed it was a little bit of mischief making or something. But if he does know what it's about and he was still annoyed about it, I get that his priority is for his players. He's spoken about that before. He doesn't like these disruptions, such as you see at Hampden with smoke bombs and all that, because it affects the players physically and sort of throws off their warm-up, all that. Right, so I get that's his priority. However, tough, right?
Yeah.
I'm on this occasion.
When's a good time to protest?
Yeah, exactly. So you have to. The protesting involves disruption at the most inopportune moment. That's just what it takes. And on this occasion, I know that we obviously bow to Brendan Rodgers' greater knowledge when it comes to all things football. But on this occasion, he's not qualified to talk about this at all because it doesn't affect him. Right? It does. The fans paying over the odds will not affect Brendan Rodgers at all. So, with respect, opinion not wanted. This is about the fans being fleeced, to be honest. Dundee United, I can only imagine the thought process that has gone behind this. A rampant profiteering from Dundee
Price
United.
gouging.
Yeah, price gouging, call it dynamic pricing. Everybody lost their shit when Ticketmaster and Oasis and all that, when all that stuff happened. It's not the same thing, but it's basically, it's
the same idea behind it.
Philosophically, it's exactly the same thing. How much money can we fleece out of these fans, leveraging heavily the demand rather than the value of the product they're actually buying? I think they've gone, we can't get away with 50 or somebody will phone the police, so why don't we drop it down to something that sounds closer to 40, even though it's still
Plus, but as Melly's saying, if you have to order your ticket and then pay online to get some sort of nonsense special delivery, it basically was a 50 quid ticket.
Yeah, it is. So it's ridiculous, and I know that, like, of course, fans can make a very good point that everyone should agree with. Absolutely everyone across the board should be able to agree with this. But you can just imagine other fans thinking, right, I kind of agree with this, but how am I going to spin this in a way that makes me think I actually support being charged £42 for a ticket? How do I take the opposite view? So I saw all this stuff being passed around that night about how Celtic, they charged 32 quid for this shite view, and it was the picture of the pillar at Celtic Park. And I'm like, it's the same problem. Fans are making this point. You're making the exact same point. Let's all get on board with it instead of arguing about it like we always do. It's like the refs thing. It depends who's saying it rather than what they're saying. So I think Scottish football needs to get a grip of itself a bit here, because as it stands, we've all had our renewals through. My ticket has gone up 5%, much like everyone else has. I'm now...
that's a scandal as well. I was going to bring us to that.
Yeah, it's all part of the same thing. Like, cards on the table now, I'm asked for £730 for my season ticket, which works out to, whichever way you slice it. I know that Rangers games will be billed as slightly more expensive, but it doesn't really matter. I'm paying a lump sum for a certain amount of games. It works out to roughly about £38, 40 to 50.
A standard season
for a
football game. Yeah,
for a game. Realistically, even if you take aside the odd extra quid here and there, because Rangers games are massive, right, and it might drop the price down a little bit for the rest. Even if I'm generous and say, right, so you're charging me for £35 to come and see Celtic annihilate Falkirk at home.
I worked out today, Stephen, minus the 100. I just took the IBROX price, which is 56 quid. So you take 112 from that. I think it worked out at £36 at a ticket.
Right,
normal.
right.
So take away that and then divide it by the 17 games. It's still £36.
Yeah, again, look, it's part of the same problem. Look, I'm a Celtic fan here, and I'm trying not to have a go at the club here, but again, it falls very much under the banner of them leveraging the demand instead of actually working out what the value of this product is. And I know people make the point here, so I know I'm dominating this and sucking all the oxygen out of the room with this, but I'm passionate about this because it affects everyone, including me. I try my best to stay out of fan matters and all that, but it affects absolutely everyone on this occasion. They're leveraging very much the demand rather than offering people value for it. And I know people make the argument that but Celtic are massively successful, going for a treble, they're within their rights to charge us. Again, it's just not how it works, because based on that logic, Jamie, you made the point recently that they're not going to offer you your money back if they don't manage something. I don't get to, like, for example, right, we draw nothing each with Dundee United next season. I don't get to go, well, it's no nothing, but can we call that 15 quid instead of 35?
What gets me is you kind of don't really get it for your season ticket anymore. You get your seat secured, and that's basically it.
It used to be a bit of value for money, didn't it? That you got the tickets slightly cheaper, you got the guarantee your seat, you got the
chucking the odd game,
a Champions League game, a friendly, and now that was years ago, and what's been done to the stadium since? Absolutely nothing. And that for the first time, well, a lot this season, I'm starting to get really uncomfortable with it, because going to away games and you manage to beg, steal and borrow to get a ticket, and then, right, can you send me that money? How much was it? Some of the games like Hibs, it's been £33. You're like, That's far too much money. And then for Dundee United to leverage basically another tenner onto that, but also to then say to their own fans, we're charging them £42, but you can bring a friend along for an extra tenner.
Yeah.
So what is the value of this ticket that you're charging me £42? Because for somebody over there in the same a stand across from me, it's £10, but I'm paying 42. And like you say, it's getting to the point now where some people go, aye, but people will pay it, so you should just charge it. Right, so where does it end then? Do you just do that until you run out of people to charge this? Because like we were just talking about players coming through and who's going to be next, right? Who's next coming through as young Celtic fans? Because you're pulling away from young fans being able to go to the game. KUHN Foundation's there, do a brilliant job at getting underprivileged kids that couldn't be able to go to games. They're going to get busier if we keep this, and I know it might be a sort of catastrophising, but it's getting to the point where a lot of people, most people you speak to are going, can I justify paying this money for this product? Where, like you say, Jamie, what do you get for it? You get a seat, but do Celtic value you in any way? Quite clearly they don't, because they've had more money in the bank than they've ever had. They've put prices up more than inflation. Champions League tickets will go up again as well, and they've got an extra Champions League game. Where's it going to end? Because I don't see, right, here's your price for your season ticket, but see, for that, a strip's going to be £50 for you. No, that'll go up as well.
I think what happens with Celtic is the pressure needs to build with Celtic. What we've seen before from Celtic is a wee bit of pressure doesn't work. Pressure, and then eventually they fold and they give you something, or they freeze the season ticket price. Excuse me. And then when no one's paying attention, they kind of don't. Because last season we got a below inflation pay rise. A pay increase was below inflation. But this season, it's slightly above. And I'm viewing that as, okay, so they just clawed back some of the money they felt that they should have made last season. The Celtic season ticket price is too high. The cost of football is getting a bit ridiculous. I think the Green Brigade put together a graphic. Yeah. Total price to follow Celtic so far this season, or whatever the case might have been, £1,800 for 9 months entertainment. That's £200 a month basically that you're shelling out to follow Celtic.
That's just the ticket.
That's just the ticket, and then you've got your travel and everything else and the strips that go along with it. It's becoming astronomical. On the subject of away fans, I think Celtic need to be, we can't be copping at both. They need to be stronger at protecting their own fans. They need to, I would even take a really uncollaborative approach, to put it politely, and I would happily say to every away ground, whatever you charge us, we're going to charge your fans. But we don't need you in our ground. You need us. These grounds need Celtic fans turning up. And if they're going to take the piss, then maybe we as fans... The problem is saying maybe we as fans need to vote with our feet. That's kind of unrealistic in a scenario where these things are often seen as one-off events. Like, it is a bit... I think the Oasis one's a good example. How many times have you been in the ground to watch Celtic win a title? How many times are you going to see Oasis play? If you don't like it, don't pay. Well, it's not really that, mate. I might only get to see this once in my life or never again. So I'm kind of, my arms forced here a wee bit. It doesn't mean they get to take the piss out of me for it.
Yeah, and look, again, it's about drawing what is a value here, because I don't want to hear about how but Celtic need to sign players, but Celtic don't get as good a TV deal as England do, but this, by that. But it's not incumbent upon the fans to make up shortfalls in the business. That's just not how it works. We need to come to some sort of we need to reach some sort of agreement as to what this is actually valued at. Again, like £35 across the board as a standard just entry to a football game for Scottish football. I'm sorry, it's far too much. I'm trying not to be too negative about it. I know some people just don't like you having a go at the club at all, but it's not really a Celtic problem, it's a Scottish football problem.
And I don't care about that. If people have got a problem with us moaning about the price of season ticket, I think that's fine. I think it's fair enough, because it's
one thing I'm confident about having the right to an opinion on is something I buy every single season. Do you know what I mean? So again, if you don't like it, then there's not really much I can say about it. But we have to come to some sort of agreement as to what the value for this is. Like, whatever it is, like take a fixture, whatever, Celtic at home to St Johnstone, that's somewhere else in Europe, that's a £22 event. You know what I mean? And we're paying way, way over the odds for it, and we're often given excuses about how TV deals and we need to sign players and all that. It's not my responsibility.
I think this is the worst it's ever been in terms of getting absolutely nothing back for your season ticket. I think it's getting to the point now where you're not even getting the absolute offensive token gesture. I don't even want all this fanciful stuff about you get a discount at the shop. I'm not interested in that. I want you to do up the stadium. We've moaned about this for long enough. If you're going to charge us £35 to come along to your ground to watch football, you're going to have to put some of that money back into the ground because it's long overdue. Melly, final word on this before we start talking about
Yeah,
the
I was just
Rangers.
going to come on to that. If I was to think, right, I'm going to go back in August, start of August, Flag Day, and I'm going to walk through that concourse and I'm going to see brand new paint and new pictures along the wall and that, and hot water in the stadium, and it's not going to happen, but it is getting to the point where people are seriously looking at this and going, can I afford this? Can I afford not to get this because I'm getting told, oh, there's 6,000 people on a waiting list? That's not how it should work. Celtic, again, I'd won a tour recently, a thing, and I went on the tour yesterday, and it's all about Celtic being the community club and how they were started, how they were founded, and I'm sort of conflicted in my head. Like, but last week you sent me a renewal through that's astronomical prices for what am I getting more for that? I'm getting less than I got 5, 6, 7 years ago, much less, and I'm paying so much more for it. And it's getting to the point where it's getting uncomfortable for people. I know people that are going, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can justify that. That's not fair.
I spoke to a guy recently. Sorry, I know that was supposed to be the last word, but this is definitely the last word. I spoke to a guy recently who said he's been on the waiting list for ages, right? It's not a sniff of it. He joined it when Brendan Rodgers was here the first time around, but he couldn't believe what it's actually worth now. It was me that told him what I'm paying for it. He was like, when I joined that waiting list, it was like 400 and odd quid or something, and now you're paying 730. So I think if you've been on the waiting list for a long time, you'll be in for a shock if you finally get the letter through the door.
There will be
And
some.
you've got a day to come up with the money.
There will be some vicious capitalist somewhere within the bowels of Celtic Park going, if there's 6,000 people on a waiting list, these things are still too cheap.
Yeah,
and that'll be there will be people pushing that button. I'm sure of it inside Celtic. It is a PLC. There are shareholders. There will be people saying, why have you got 6,000 people on a waiting list? You're only charging that. Anyway, let's hope those people don't win. Speaking of people not winning, Celtic v Rangers this weekend. Rangers v Celtic, Martin Melly. I would go so far as to say if we don't beat Rangers this weekend, this title is tainted.
In the mud.
Put an asterisk beside it. Maybe not that bad, but there's still things to play for this season. Brendan Rodgers spoke week before last about setting goals and markers for the end of the season. Beating Rangers has to be. We've been here before. We all yucked it up over Barry, and he ended up getting a last laugh then. But the fact of the matter is, his team have won absolutely nothing. The guy is a floundering manager. He is.
Is it 4-12 or something like that?
Abysmal.
Players don't even listen to him.
No,
I was going to come to that. He's worse than Philip Clement. He is the only thing that makes you could put forward a cogent, serious argument that Barry Ferguson is doing as good a job as a coat stand would be at the side of the touchline, right? The only thing that lets that argument down is the fact he beat us.
Yes, yeah.
So
that's it.
the guy's beyond useless. I don't know how he fluked it against us at Celtic Park, but they did. They got the win and the smash and grab, and we need to put that right. And I don't care if I've considered petty. I've given Celtic all the praise for winning the title. I did that all at the start of the podcast. I recognise that. I accept it. But by God, we have to beat that lot. It's not win or bust, because that's really, really unfair. But we have to put right that wrong.
Yeah, we definitely do, and this has to be the number one target, because see if it's going to be almost goals or whatever, I don't care about any of that. If it doesn't involve beating them at IBROX in this last game, then that is the main target for me.
You're still thinking about the irrelevant news,
Yeah,
aren't you? Scored 107 goals.
No, I don't care as long as we beat them, because you're right, it has sort of dampened this. I think if Celtic hadn't have lost that game at Celtic Park, the sort of malaise over the last month or so wouldn't have been there at all. It would have been, you know what, it's fine. But that game's really cast a shadow over the season, and it has to be put right, because Celtic are doing everything right. And this team, yes, you can go to Bayern Munich and do that. You can go and scush the league. 17 points, an incredible. I didn't even mean that. Incredible achievement going out and winning 4 in a row. But it's not going to feel the same if you
That's
go out
what should have been on the t-shirts, by the way.
Oh.
We were talking about this pre-thing. I don't want to wind the clock back podcast else, but I'm so glad you mentioned that Melly, because we were talking about this before the mics went on. See this FORREST, a bring back shithousery, bring
Yeah,
back smell the
shit.
gum. It should have been 100% should have been skushed it.
Oh,
That's what it should have been anyway, Stephen, as you were.
Patter own goal absolutely
Aye.
blazed over the bar, wasn't it? No, look, it's. I definitely want Celtic to win this game. The worst thing that anyone involved in this rivalry ever convinced themselves of or tried to convince themselves of online is that none of this matters. Oh no, we don't talk about them. No, if you talk about us, you're obsessed. And no, we only focus on. Come on, this is important stuff. And
Yes.
we're putting ourselves on the line here again after we get absolute pelters. The last time we yucked it up as you described ahead of a Rangers game, it's because we want to win these games and we feel strongly about it and it matters to us.
My first game was 3-0 at Hampden. We
Oh,
finished
yeah.
4th in the league.
There you go. Look, some of these great memories are they're huge drivers.
That was
of
a bad memory.
Yeah.
Was it
No,
not?
we won 3-0.
Oh, was that? I
yeah.
thought you were going to say.
We would finish 4th in the league.
Right.
That was the start of me getting into it.
Exactly. These memories are huge drivers of what this whole thing is. Like, football's nothing without rivalry, and we can talk about different clubs and all that sort of stuff, but it's still the same people at the end of the day, isn't it? You want to get one over them. So it's a huge part of being a football fan is winning at the expense of someone else.
Yes.
Because winning without that is not hollow. It's not tainted as you joked about, but it's lesser. So I definitely want to put right what happened at Celtic Park because I thought that was unacceptable at the time, despite the fact that it said nothing towards the destination of the title. And if anything, the lead has actually extended since then. Now we're sitting at 17 points now. But these games will never not matter. You can take any example of a dead rubber that Celtic have ever lost in these games throughout history, and I'll be still annoyed about it in 15 years' time.
I'm still annoyed about Ange going, oh, remember he lost because we won the league, mate. You know, who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we
definitely.
care. All of us care. All of us guys paying 35 quid a ticket. We're the ones who care. How do we do that though this time, Stephen? What do we need to change? I offered a different formation last time. I offered a different lineup that Brendan didn't go for. Obviously backed himself in that one.
Right, yeah.
Should have probably went with me, but I was suggesting
Take it back. I said earlier that he would usually bow to his, kind of superior knowledge of football, but not on that
check the
occasion.
record,
either.
bud. I said start Adam Ida up front,
Yeah.
drop KUHN to the bench. Obviously, with Jota being out for this time around, it looks like he's going to be out anyway. Ida starts, KUHN and Maeda on the wings.
Been some reports, haven't there, about how Jota might miss the start of next season.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously, it's not a concern for now, but obviously we will then start to worry about Champions League qualifiers, closer to the time. But for the task at hand,
Another ticket we'll need to pay for.
yeah,
Steve.
yeah, exactly. So, for the task at hand, somewhat limited in options for the forward areas because of the loss of Jota. Now,
Yep.
I suppose the obvious choice is definitely Ida. I think Ida definitely plays. So it's really only between Forrest and KUHN. And I think with KUHN having come back to scoring form, I think it's very obviously him that's going to play, and Forrest hopefully to come on. And what a way to clinch! What a way to tick the streak off, to get one at IBROX.
First ever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's never scored at IBROX. That's right. So Jota, that was my first sort of wince when I saw Jota. Took quite a heavy one. I thought, he's going to miss I really want to win that game, and I really want to do it with Jota. It's a big part of why we brought him back is because he always turns up, or he's historically been a big performer
Enjoys
in
playing
these games.
against them.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's got several goals. Quite a good scoring record against Rangers for the fairly limited games he's played against them.
Scalper before he left.
Absolutely. Yeah, we wanted a return to that, so we're not going to get it on this occasion, but got good options to come in there. Ida, I think, probably deserves to start anyway. We've spoken about him quite a lot in recent weeks, and about how the nature of how he plays is probably just about getting him into the right positions. And funnily enough, since we've said that, you're welcome. You're welcome. He started scoring goals again. So I noticed that, just as a wee kind of aside to that, I noticed that he, after the game, said, look, I've scored 17 goals in fairly limited minutes. I think people would probably be happy with that if it wasn't for, fees and stuff like that. So I think he deserves definitely to start because he offers something that we don't have elsewhere. Dyson, I think, probably, again, goes towards proving something Melly's been talking about recently, about how he's very, very dangerous off the left. So it really is just over that right wing thing. But Ida, for me, is an absolute must.
Cast your mind back, Melly. What went wrong in that game at Celtic Park that caused us to lose? And then, by extension, what do we need to fix this time around?
Why couldn't you ask him that question? Why do I need to ask? Cast my mind back to that shambles.
I'm going to ignore it.
Celtic didn't get out at the start. We were a goal down without barely touching the ball or making a pass of the ball, and then we
3 sustained minutes, wasn't it? It was just constant balls into the box. Yeah.
And we knew it was going to happen from the very start, but we couldn't deal with it. We did have Nawrocki come in from the cold and play that game, and it sort of made everything go down the right-hand side because he isn't a naturally left-sided centre-half. So what Celtic have to do is move the ball from defence quicker. And I think at the weekend we've seen what Adam Idah can do. Celtic were 1-0 up when Adam Idah came on, but I think in the time before Idah came on, I remember Daizen Maeda dropping in once, laying the ball back and making a move. After that, you've seen Sinisalo picking out Idah a number of times, and it wasn't a long pass. It was balls into his feet where he can lay it off. Idah gives Celtic more dimensions. I think the KUHN, Maeda and Jota looks good on paper, but it's happened a number of times and we haven't really seen it flourish.
Yeah.
And if we look at the players right now, if we're looking at FORREST and Idah in that, I think the 3 players on form would be KUHN, Idah and Maeda. Even if Jota was fit, you could probably make an argument to say, do you know what, maybe you're better coming off the bench because he hadn't started the last 2 games previous to this. But Idah gives us a different dimension for me. He gives us that ball where we can lay it into him and move up the pitch a lot quicker. Celtic went from Sinisalo having the ball to scoring so quickly. That's Idah pushing players away. He wasn't directly involved in the goal, but he made himself a nuisance in the middle. Ball falls to KUHN, he puts it in. He gives us that option to go more direct, and that's what we needed because it was Carter Vickers, Nawrocki and Alistair Johnston were just on the ball for so long. It felt like what we need to do is get the ball moved in quick to them. Idah's done it at IBROX before. We just need to see more of it. He's scored a few goals recently, so that's the thing that we were sort of getting on at him. Look, he's not perfect up there. He doesn't hold it up and it doesn't stick all the time, but more often than not it does, and he gives us that other dimension. I'm not saying he's better than Jota, but maybe a better option.
It will be interesting to see how Celtic play. I could only really speculate on how exactly they'll go about that, but for me, there is a pattern emerging with these games that Celtic haven't started particularly well in any of the last 3 of them. Now, I know eventually got the job done on the cup final on penalties, but wasn't a great performance.
The first half again.
No, the pattern is emerging where Celtic don't start particularly well, and then they sort of struggle to get out of their own defensive third, as Melly's describing there. So it'll be interesting to see if any, what if any adjustments Brendan Rodgers is likely to make to this, because I think we all come away from the last game thinking, well, something's got to change here. I don't know, maybe not necessarily personnel, but the approach has got to change here because we are falling into that pattern.
It's not working.
Yeah, exactly. So we're falling into the pattern of trying the same things over and over again and coming away with similar results. Now, conceded 3 goals to them in, 3 consecutive games now? That's not good enough. By a long way, that's not good enough. So I'm very interested to see how Celtic approach it. But look, we've got to be confident. We've got to be confident because they are
Everyone else can do it against them.
Just about every other team in the league can do it against them. They're flailing left and right. They're out there questioning each other, as you mentioned earlier, Jamie, about how the players are out there talking about how they're not listening to the manager.
Liam Kelly, isn't it? After whose Butland's been completely dropped for the scene there.
Well, you're telling me since Alan McGregor came in as goalkeeping coach, Jack Butland's performances have fell off a cliff.
Fell right off a cliff. So he's been dropped. Kelly's come in, and it was quite remarkable because, again, nobody really picked up on it, but after the game he said, I don't know why the players aren't doing what the manager tells us. He tells us that the ball must go forward after we lose it, but it keeps coming back. People are just ignoring the manager. I know that kind of flies in the face of the Barry Ferguson narrative, but to me that's just a manager not doing his job, because if the players are not listening to you, 1, they don't respect you, you piss. And or 2, the players are going, this guy has no clue what he's doing, and I don't care how many times he tells us to do it, we are simply not doing it. The outcome, or any rationale behind that outcome of players not doing what the manager tells them, is just the manager's no good at his job and he needs to go. So he's getting a very, 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 very easy ride. Barry is getting, and it's because he beat us. That's the only reason for it. He's getting a very easy ride. And it's just, I just feel so strongly that we need to put it right. And Brendan, it'll be a blot on the season. It will genuinely be a blot on the season if we lose this game, because you can't really go through the whole season and not. I know we beat them 3-0 before, early on in the season, but we need to make that mark. We need to wrestle that sort of trophy that doesn't exist. We need to wrestle that back from them.
Yeah, and we'll move on from it come Cup final day. Yeah. We'll all be thinking about that. But for the time being, for the rest of the league games, we will be thinking about how we've not beaten them for ages and it's not good enough. So I totally get that. I've just got no any and I've said it so many times on the podcast, boring myself talking about it, but I'm not getting any interest in this dead rubber pattern. It doesn't matter, etc. It matters hugely to me to beat Rangers. And
do you know what's weird?
I'm not afraid of saying that in case I get slagged.
There was more of that last time around than from Celtic fans, really, than there is this time around. There was a lot of that dead rubber pattern last time around from Celtic fans on Celtic Online. Not huge amounts, but I've seen none of it now. Everyone you talk to, Celtic fans in the Discord and online, they want that scalp. They want it back.
I think you're right. I think having lost at home to Barry Ferguson's Rangers crossed a line for a lot of people. Can't speak for everyone, but I think that probably crossed a line into what we collectively agree as Celtic fans we shouldn't be losing to that level of Rangers. So I hope so. Hope everyone's on board and motivated to do this. But what you're saying there about Barry Ferguson's results and having seemingly lost the respect of the players, I think it's number two of what you mentioned there. I think it's very much that he doesn't know what he's doing. He's the single least qualified guy in that building to do the job he's currently occupying. And it's all very well said. I think we give managers, or the person who happens to hold the manager's job at any given time, far too much credit and far too much respect. And well, he's the manager, so his ideas should be listened to. Not necessarily, because if his ideas are absolute shite, then of course they're not going to listen to them. And of course, if the worse your tactics are, the less inclined players are to believe them. If they're continually making the same mistakes over and over again, having listened to this guy, the less inclined they are to believe them going forward, and the more inclined they are to, when things are going badly, revert to improvisation. And that's what it looks like when they're not paying attention to the manager. They're just making it up as they go along because your tactics have got us into this bother. We're 2-0 down for about the 8th game in a row. So we're going to do what we like to try and get back into it. So I think that's what Rangers are experiencing just now. They've got a guy delivering the tactics who doesn't know what he's doing. To all intents and purposes, a former manager who was a pundit at the time, now telling these players who, granted, haven't won an awful lot, but they're professional players who are used to working under proper managers. Now this guy's telling them what to do and they're not buying it.
It's all of the stuff is true, and it makes the Brendan Rodgers losing it. That must hurt Brendan. It really must hurt Brendan and the players. Although I know Cameron Carter-Vickers was out midweek saying, look, it's not what happens in these one or two individual games. I get why you would say that. I don't know if I buy it. I think Brendan Rodgers and the players will be fully, the minds will be fully focused, as will ours. We'll be doing a live watch along for the game, patreon.com/20minute-tims. You can watch us. We'll be in the studio reacting, watching it live. So it's, for me, it's one that they absolutely have to put right. Barry Ferguson was in the press last week saying these players are playing for the Rangers' future. I thought he's just being a pundit. He's standing. Yeah. He's a fan with the best seat in the house because he'll be away at the end of the season. They've just brought a new director of football. Barry Ferguson has no say over whether these guys at Rangers.
He's Prod Stewart.
He's got no say whatsoever. But look, we can sit here and we can laugh at Rangers all we can. But one thing that keeps coming back to haunt us is the fact that yes, they beat us that time.
Yeah.
We can erase that from the record. We are going to win the league. We're going to win the treble. We're going to beat Rangers at IBROX, and then there's no comeback from that. It doesn't matter what happens. It is dead. It is gone. Bring on next season. And in fact, we'll be back before then. We'll be back next week is where you can find us. Thank you so much to everyone who watches and listens. Thank you for your continued support on Patreon if you get us there. And we'll speak to you very soon after the game.